All right, welcome back to Adobe Photoshop. And today we're going to take a look at more selections. Yes, I know we've done all this on the selection tools, new layer adjustments, but there's a central location where you can make really complex selections inside of Adobe Photoshop. And that location is called Select and Mask. So today we're going to take a look at how to use Select and Mask inside of Adobe Photoshop. So let's move on over to Adobe Photoshop. We have this woman here, and we could use any of these selection tools to make a selection of her subject. But you'll notice that up here, we have something called Select and Mask, and I might have referenced it before. So Select and Mask is basically available whenever you click on any of the selection tools over here. If it is not up on the top menu, all you need to do is go up here to Select, click on Select, and then go down here, and you'll see we've got Select and Mask. And the quick key for this is Command Option R, and that's for a Mac. My guess it's Control Alt R on a PC, but I'm not positive. So if anybody knows that and wants to put it in the link below, that would be great. I've never actually used a PC in 30 years, so I'm not positive. So let's go ahead and click on this. And boom, just like that, we are in Select and Mask. And so you'll notice over here, we have a whole bunch of selection tools, and we've got a whole bunch of different options over here. So let's click on this first one. And let's take a look at the different selection tools that we have available to us inside of this program. Right here, we have the quick selection tool. And the quick selection tool is where you just kind of click and drag over an area. We'll take a look at more of this here in a second. I'm just going to hit Command Z to go back. We have an edge refining brush, and this will allow us to select edges better. And we'll take a look when we go over that. Right here, we've got the brush tool. So basically, if you click on the brush tool, anywhere that you paint, it's going to make a selection. We have the object selection tool. We have the lasso tool. We have the move tool. So if you are zoomed way in like this, and you click that, you can then move the image around. It is just way easier to hold the space bar because then you can move around. And you can zoom. So if I hit Command 0 to zoom out and I click the zoom tool and I want to zoom into this eye, I'm going to left click and hold and then drag, and that's going to zoom into that specific location. All right, Command 0 brings us all the way back out, and I'm going to come down here and reset that. So actually, let's go ahead and just make a selection right there. So you can see the area that gets selected turns clear. The other area is kind of this 50% semi-opaque red. And right up here are your different views. You can view this in a whole bunch of different ways. So we can do it on onion skin. We can do the marching ants. We can do it on black. We can do it on white, black and white, on layers. I prefer the overlay. If you do not like the color red, you can simply click on the color and pick any other color, and that will display it that way. We're just going to leave it as red. Here we can show our edge, we can show the original, and we can also show a higher quality preview. For me, all this is fine. If I don't like the masked areas in red, I can switch it and do the opposite. In my case, I'm just going to leave it like this. That is the way that I prefer. Down here, we have a refining mode, and we can do this by color or by object aware. So depending on the image and the way the image looks, sometimes if it involves color, the color aware version can be better, or sometimes the object aware can be better. It really just depends on the image. So our edge detection, which we'll usually use with this edge refining brush, is right here. We can control the way that that works. And then we've got some global refinements. And this really has to do with, if you see here, I'm making this selection, but it's a hard selection. And if I made an adjustment layer with that, we'd see the edge. So we can come in here and feather that to make that a softer selection. We can also smooth that out. We can add some contrast, and we can move that selection in and out. That's what Shift Edge does. We can invert the selection. We have something down here under output settings called decontaminate colors. And this is if you shot something on a green screen, a lot of times the edges get this nasty green color, the best way to do it is not use a green screen if you're going to cut an image out because it looks horrible. Use white. It's much better. And then we have different ways to output our selection. So down here, we can do it as a selection, a layer mask, a new layer with a layer mask, new document, and a new document with a layer mask. These are so much more helpful than just making a selection. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset that, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the easiest way to make a selection. And because this is a subject and I want to cut the background out, all I need to do is come up here and hit select subject. Now we do have this little arrow right here. And if I click this, you'll notice it says device or cloud. And so if you use the cloud, you're going to get a better selection than if you use the device. It's using AI to make that. So we're going to leave it on cloud. I'm going to hit select subject. And Photoshop's going to do a pretty good job of just selecting this subject out. And just like that, this is pretty accurate. Now, because we might want to refine the hair, up here we have a refine hair button. So I can click this and it's going to look at those edges and try to make those hair selections a little bit better and pick up those little frizzy hairs. Now, this is the problem with making a selection on hair. If the hair, like this in this case, because most portraits are using a shallow depth of field, so the hair is usually out of focus. Photoshop has a really difficult time making hair selections or selections in general on out of focus areas because it doesn't have a defined sharp edge. So you get these kind of soft, fuzzy, ugly looking edges. And the way to remedy that, of course, is to shoot with a wide depth of field where everything's in focus, and it's going to do a much better of making the selection, but you don't always want everything to be that sharp. It's a trade-off. You really need to know if you're going to cut something out beforehand because you can do things like shoot an item like this on a white background and the background won't contaminate the selection and alter it. It's going to give you a much better end product. So yes, Photoshop can do stuff, but it's not perfect, and understanding how to photograph something to make your selection better is important. So we've made that selection. I can simply come down here, and in this case, I'm going to output as a new layer with a layer mask. So it's going to duplicate the layer and put the layer mask on that. And we're going to hit OK. And you can see we now don't have a background. So this is our cutout area. And you can see right here, those out of focus areas where they're fuzzy and hazy. They're what we call semi-translucent, and yet it doesn't do a perfect job of making that selection. So this is where having an image maybe that's a little bit sharper would work well. So if we go to this next image and we look at that, yeah, it's a lot sharper, but we have another problem in this, and that is because the background is black. So because we have these white whiskers, those whiskers are going to show up semi-transparent, but they have a black background. So they're going to show up this weird gray color, and I'll show you how that works. First of all, let me get rid of that nasty blue color because it's just going to make it easier to look at. Let's go to blues. All right, that looks better. So I've got the horse, and we want to make a selection. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and go from select down to select and mask. And it's going to bring that up. I'm going to hit select subject again. It's going to do a really nice job of making that selection. You'll probably see up here in the hair, see how it's carrying some of those black areas in the background. The hair's there, but you can see the black, and you can see the black there, the black there, the black there. If we hit the refine brush, it's probably going to remove some of them, but it didn't get them all. That's where this little brush comes into effect. You can manually select the radius, but I like to click Smart Radius and have it do it. So I like to make my brush size just a little bit bigger than the area that I want to select, which is about this. And I'll paint it half on the subject and half on the outside. So you can see it's halfway on, and I'm going over basically where that ear fuzz is and trying to make a better selection of that area. And then if we come right down here on the forelock, we'll get that little area right there. It picked that up. Same thing here. I might need to make a little bit bigger brush, but we'll see. Go all the way to here, and it's going to make, yep, a better selection. Okay. So we will go ahead and output. This is a new layer with a mask, and boom, just like that, you can see that it did a pretty good selection. I'm going to go ahead and create a white layer in between this or below the selection. So I'm going to hit the plus, and I'm going to use a fill command on a Mac, which is Shift Delete. You could also just go hit Edit Fill, and we're going to fill it with white. And so you can see how this gets a really weird gray, the unsharp areas, and the selections don't look so good. And look, there's a way to fix this. We're not going to go over it right now, but there is a way to select and fix some of this. But you see how it's kind of a weird gray? That's because that background was black. And so just because you can make an accurate selection doesn't mean the selection's going to look good. So let's go back to our subject here, and let's delete this layer. And we're going to go back into select and mask. I will use the quick key this time. Was that Command Option R on a Mac, and we have our subject. So let's take a look at some of the other selection methods. And this is what's cool about this program, is that we can combine the different tools into one selection. I could, for some reason, take the quick selection tool, which is not the greatest selection tool, but hey, before all the new AI, this was the best thing we had. And basically, I made my brush bigger so it's trying to select a larger area. And you'll see here in a second, I'll probably make my brush smaller, and it's telling Photoshop, hey, I want you to look for a smaller area. So we'll make this smaller now, and it will be a little bit more accurate in the areas that it tries to select. And that way it doesn't go out of where I want it to get. And we'll come down here and paint on those areas, and you can see, yeah, it's slowly coming in. Now, I didn't do it on these areas because it's going to select probably the background and weird things. Just like before, I can hit Refine Hair, and it's probably going to pick up these different areas. And just like that, we've got a good selection. Now, I can see an area right here where it messed up. So let's go ahead and grab the zoom tool, and we're going to click on this and zoom in. You can see where it picked like the black writing on, and we actually want this in the selection. So the best way to do this is simply with this brush. Now remember, this brush has a hard edge. So if we want it to be softer, we can add a little bit of feather to it. I'm going to also make that smaller. And basically up here, you'll notice we have a plus and a minus. So if we want to subtract from the selection or add from the selection, we can do that. You can also you could also just use on a Mac, the Shift and the Option key, on a PC, the Shift and the Alt key. And so basically I can come in here and just kind of brush over and add that selection back. And if I mess up and I go out too far, I can just hit the Option key or the subtract, and you can see inside the little tool there's a minus, and I could come in here and take that back out. So that's using multiple tools. So in this case, I didn't get all the red that we see right there. I'm holding the Shift key. That's giving me a plus. I can come in here. I can circle the area that I missed. I can add that to the selection, and boom, just like that, we've added that to the selection. Just to see how it works, I'll hold the minus and make a selection there, the Shift, and add it back, just like that. So we can zoom in and out. You can also just hit and 0 or Control 0 on a PC, and that will fill your screen. All right, so this did a pretty good job. Let's actually zoom in to this little location right here because I want to show you how something else works. So I'm using the space bar to move it instead of that because it's just quicker. So if I want to feather this edge selection, I can really just kind of click on this, and now you can see how it blends it in. Now in a selection like this where we want it to be accurate, you don't want a feathered area like that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command Z. Undo that. We don't want a feather on this selection. We can also smooth out that selection or add more contrast, which will give us sort of a harder edge for that selection. We can also, and this is really what I want you to see, is we can take this edge and shift it in and shift it out to make it more exact. So if I shift it in, notice it moved that selection in this way. And if I move it out, it moves it out that way. So I can kind of refine where that edge needs to be to get the best selection by shifting that edge. And this can be helpful. Sometimes you'll see you get a little black line because your background's black and you don't want that. So you just want to take off a little bit of the subject to get a pure white edge so it doesn't have that black ring around it, so it doesn't look weird. So that's what these refinement items do. Hit Command 0 to get out of that. We're going to go ahead and reset this. And so I'm simply just going to come in here and use the brush tool. So you can take that brush tool and we'll make that brush much bigger. And we're going to give it a 0 feather because I'm going to come in here and make a selection. Now we know if we make a layer adjustment with a hard edge, you're going to see it. It's going to look like junk. So we're going to come in here and we're going to feather that edge now. And now when we make our layer adjustment, it's going to look a lot better. So in this case, you probably want to output as a selection because you don't want to apply it to the layer. You want to apply it to a layer mask. So we'll simply come down here, hit OK. It's going to output that. And then we're going to just come in here and make a curve selection. And then I can simply brighten that area and boom, just like it's made the mask from the selection that this time we used in selected mask. And you're going to be like, well, why would you? That is basically what selected mask entails. If you found this video helpful and could give us a thumbs up, that would be great. I'd really love to grow this channel. And without comments, likes, and people watching the whole videos, the channel won't grow. And if the channel doesn't grow, I'm not going to be able to. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. Don't forget, we have a Facebook group where you can ask more complicated questions. The link is in the description. If you would like to subscribe to the channel and get updates on all the newest videos, you can subscribe. You can also subscribe from my website. And if you subscribe at the website, there is a free link for some free Photoshop actions that you can download and do some pretty cool stuff with. That's all that I have for you today. Have an absolutely wonderful day.